Hello folks, I'm Melly Little and this is your daily DailyWrap, where we take a look at these markets and we do it from a different perspective. Neoclassical, supply and demand on the charts, trend, that's what it's about. We do it 4 times a week, Monday through Thursday, live at 9 o'clock Eastern Time here on the base of the Rocky Mountains. Folks, I'm glad you could join me. It was finally a day of distribution. I mean, I was remarking to subscribers earlier today, I was actually pretty busy today and kind of lost track of what was happening, and before I knew it, the market was falling apart. But I was excuse me, as I was watching what was happening, the last 2-3 hours, this market just totally gave it up. It looked to me like some fear finally coming into this market. It's been ages since we've seen fear. I'm going to put up the SPX here, put it on a 1-day chart. Yeah, this thing just fell apart. That's a 1 minute, 1 day. So you go from 42 to basically 16. That's a 26 point drop. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good drop, and it looks like it was an ABCD structure on the way down here. Intraday, as this thing worked its way down, once it got going, you had what looks to be, let me get my pointer over here, what looks to be an ABCD structure on the way down intraday, right? From here, well, if I can actually do it. Anyway, the point is that it looks like that's what happened intraday here. Something's wrong with my pointer. Oh well. We'll see if we can get it working before we get going. Let's look at the ending numbers. Down 179, 16,258 on the Dow. 1%. 1.5% on the largest declines. S&P's lost 1.25. 23.17 down. 118.19 was the close. Composite down 61 1/3. 411.13 1/3. NDX down 52 1/3. 35.12 3/4, and the Russell down 16.5, basically 11.48. We had gold up today. Silver was up. The dollar was down about 1/4%. Not that bad actually compared to what happened Friday. If we go back and we think about Friday we had a nice push down to start the day off the job numbers, but that wouldn't hold, right? I mean, they couldn't hold it, and they ended up flipping this thing around, and we ended up with a up day, on Friday. And if you think about what that situation was, well, it's it's the old all news is good news. the thought was that this market would simply work its way higher no matter what. And for a while it looked like that's what was going to happen, but in the end, today at least, it looked quite different. So it looks like I finally got my pointers working here. So let's go in and start looking at these charts. Now, I didn't have a time to go over all these together myself, so we'll kind of do it together here. Alright, so we have an ABCD structure on the way down. You know, we were trying to set one up to the upside. Actually, there's already one in place, but now it's pretty much done. That little ABCD structure is to take us back into this retest regen zone. That zone is this high to the low, and we didn't quite get to it today. Price point on that high is 118.1355. We got the 118.1552. We're doing 35, almost 36 into 15, but the breakout bar's got 51. So, you know, there's a number of things happening here. You have to kind of keep them all separated in your mind, or at least distinct. And that is that you have more than 6 bars across. Okay, that's one thing. So when you have more than 6 bars, right, greater than 6, that scenario is the retest regen. As it comes back in to retest those areas that it broke out from, it has a very high probability in the 90th percentile to go back the other way, right? And so that's kind of the scenario as this thing's coming back in, that retest regen zone. If the volume's right, which it's going to be, unless we get a huge volume tomorrow and blow this out, then you're going to have a good possibility that as this comes back into this area, it's going to find buyers in here, and it's going to at least flip around for a bounce. And when I say at least, you have to look at everything in the context of what's happening. In other words, this thing could push lower, but you're going to have an ABCD structure finish up. You're going to have a retest regen zone. It's all going to come together right there at about that same price point. Maybe the high of this big volume bar, the low of the breakout bar. That's 1810. This guy here is 1811. So somewhere in there potentially would be the spot you would think. So another maybe 6-7 points down, and should get a bounce out of that. Now, you can't just look at one of them though. You have to go look at the rest of them and see what they're looking like. And if I look at the Russell, now the Russell had already done the retest regen zone, and when I said a while ago, let me draw it in here, when I said a while ago that at least the bounce, this is what I'm talking about. So you come back in here, you test, and you get quote unquote at least the bounce, and now you're right back to it. Now that could be the same scenario that's going to set up over on the S&P 500. Doesn't have to be, but it may. Now that the Russell's coming in the second time, this really isn't retest regen anymore. We've already done that, right? Unless you make a new high, you don't do it again. As you come back in, now you're looking for support. Support is on this big volume bar. Top of that guy is 1147.12. We came into it today, closed over it. Didn't have the volume. That also suggests it wants to try to bounce. So the Russell is kind of lining up with the S&P 500, although the S&P wants to try to get back in a little bit more. The Russell could do the same again and test again, but the Russell so far doesn't look like it has the juice to break it down into the big bar. NDX. Now the NDX had already done the retest regen last week. Also got its bounce. Same sort of scenario. Comes in, does the retest regen off of this area, right? Gets its bounce right off the top. Okay, what's next? Well, now you're coming back. You got an ABCD structure on the way back. So if you draw that in, it's going to take you in deeper. This support zone looks like it just barely held today. It's coming into, remember, we had been talking about this being the Fed bar, if you remember, and this was the quad witching bar. That was when we had high volume and we had wide price spread, right? That's those two bars. That's what we're coming back into. There's a lot of support into this area, and if you look at where it actually got today, it got into the bottom of this and tested it. It looks like 35.02. We closed at 35.12. We got to 34.99. So we went into the bottom of it, tested into it, couldn't break down below it and hold below it. That's actually a test of this low. It's not a swing point low, just a low, and held. Can it test again? Yeah, sure, it can test again, especially if the S&P and the Dow and so forth want to test again. But so far, that held. Looks like, you know, good situation. Let's look at the broader composite right quick. Okay, so this one's coming back and trying to do like the S&P. Remember, 3 of them had already tested. Excuse me, 2 had already tested, NDX and Russell, and 3 had not. So the test here, again, same bar setups, right? You got this same setup here, which is strong, and you have the retest regen, and you have the big volume breakout. That's going to try to come back in and test. It didn't quite get to it today. It got into this bar, 4111.93. Yep, got into it, closed over it, didn't have the volume. Again, can it get back in here and test? Yes, it probably wants to at some point. Does it have to right away? You know, it doesn't. S&P, NASDAQ Composite, NDX, all of them, none of them are telling me tonight that it has to come back tomorrow. We could just open up tomorrow, and if you remember, tomorrow is the first day of the big earnings. Wells Fargo, JPM in the morning, that's going to be a big number. Those two, we may just try to gap up off of it. We may test again. Looks like we have about a coin flip here, but if it does test lower, probabilities are pretty high this is going to hold given the way these things look. Let's look at the Dow and see if it looks any different, although I don't pay quite as much attention to it. Doing the same thing, trying to come back and retest regen. So it tested into the big bar, the 20th, 16,287, and we stayed in it. So that's the only one that looks different, and it's the thinnest one, and actually it had been the strongest one. So, you know, maybe that's trying to suggest we are going to test a little bit lower in the morning. So that's one index saying that. The others can. It looks like they'll hold if they do. Okay, so that's these 5 indexes. What are we, about 2.5? Looks like about 2.5, 3% off the top. Not that much. It's not a serious retrace at all even yet, and you're still coming back into retest regen zones that should hold. Let's go over and look at the sectors, because I got a feeling some of these sectors didn't do as well. Let's just start at the top and work through them real quick. IYT had broken out and still broken out. So it's coming back in to try and test the support zone. It should do it tomorrow. The volumes don't look very well. This looks to try to trade lower. Semis. Now the semis, if you remember, got the big pop up on I forget what the news was, but there was a big pop up, and then they've just drifted back down, and they're testing the lows again. Remember, they had failed to hold. This is important. First time back. Now, in this case, no, actually, this case it wasn't the same. It was slightly different. This was an odd case. You had a retest regen zone. You broke underneath it. You went way over it. Then now you're back down here into the same range. Usually, when you can't hold a retest regen, that sets up some sort of a range trade. You know, what the size of that range is has to be determined, but usually it sets up some sort of range trade. It essentially says that you can't go higher, right? You're going to have a hard time going higher. And even though this one did spike up there, it didn't hold. And that looks like 42.30. Ah, it's not an island reversal, just barely not. Okay, so semis, they don't look very healthy. So IYT wants to try to trade lower. Semis want to try to do the same. XLB's coming back in, 5 mil into 3.5 into nothing. So it's coming with enough force that it's going to test some more. So that one also suggests some more testing to the downside. XLE got demolished today. And I don't know, did the USO go in the tanks today? I didn't watch. Oh, still can't find a bottom. I was probing for a bottom, eventually stopped out at a loss, and this thing still can't find a bottom. That was about a week ago I was trying that. XLE just totally demolished. And let me see, so it's coming back into a swing point low at 85. Got to 85.09, 16.7 back into 20. This is going to test the bottom and hold, and it's going to set up just a large range up here. You know, like in most ranges, you got the big range itself, and then you usually have something inside of it, and you kind of have that here, right? Two halves that are about the same, and it's at the bottom. It's going to test the bottom. Looks like it probably will hold this time because you've come a long way. You've already finished off an ABCD structure. You're over. You've more than finished it now, right? You had one here. You more than finished it already. So this looks like it probably will try to bounce tomorrow. That should help the S&Ps. Financials. This will be the story tomorrow. Let's see what they did today. All right, coming back for the retest. And this has been a long, arduous trip. You can't get these guys to come back. So it looks like it's already into it. Swing point high was 2164, 2166. Didn't quite get it. Doing 423 versus 120, and the breakout was nothing. So that also looks like it's going to try to test again. I've gone through 5 already. 4 of them say they're going to try to come back deeper already. Let's look at the industrials, and that also looks like it's going to come in and try to do the retest regen. So that's 5 out of 6. XLK. And those are all ABCD structures on the way down. I haven't been drawing them all in, but I'm sure you see them here. You got little small ABCD structures on the way down to take them back into the zones. XLK is already into it, already doing the test. The bottom is 34.85, got to 34.83, closed at 34.94, did 6.4 into 3.9 into 7. That looks like it probably will hold. So that's 2 of them that want to try to hold now. XLP, XLU, they're not really going to tell us anything. Let's look at XLV. That's the healthcare, the strongest one. I'll look at the volume coming off the top. I did a 1-minute trade on this Friday, and I did a continuation of it today. I told you today that this thing is probably done and is going to come back in and try to retest. That's exactly what it's going to do. You don't like to see it come off the top with volume like this, although it's going to leave a spike at the top. So XLV, even though it's strong, will probably hold. It does look like it wants to come in. XLY, the last one here, discretionary. Let's see what this one's doing. Oh, this one just caved in, and it blew away. Okay, here's another one. This is the next one. So this is another one that's doing the same thing, right? Can't hold the retest regen, fails. When you can't hold it, that's a bad sign. That says it's going to set up a range at best. And that range to me looks like from here to there. So if you take the top end of the range and the bottom end of the range, right, it looks like it's going to try to make it to the bottom of it. And right away. Sectors. Very different than the indexes. Sectors showing as extended weakness into tomorrow. That suggests to me that we're going to see this market trade lower to start with tomorrow. And that will be interesting since those reports come out before the market. So I don't know how to resolve that. Maybe that says that Wells Fargo and JPM are not going to be able to lift this market. Okay, so let me go look at the OX markets, and then I'll come back and take questions here. Okay, let's start with the dollar. Gold had another good day. Gold stocks a tremendous day again. I was telling y'all it looked like they were trying to bottom. It looks like they in fact did bottom, at least near term. Okay, so the dollar's coming in to test again, still has no volume. But it's into the bar now and closed into it. 21.66, we closed at 21.63. Well, this is kind of the key period, and the reason for it is the dollar has this big wide gap, and it hasn't been that strong. I mean, if I pull this over to bring in the weekly on it, you know, it's struggled here for a long time, and it was just trying to make a lift again to go back and test that high. Right now, yeah, just it's struggling. It's struggling. This is key for the dollar. Dollar needs to hold here. If it doesn't, you know, it's going to go back and test these lows. You got two swing point lows there. You break those, that probably is going to drive you far enough to take you back to the bottom, which is over here as well. So kind of a key point here for the dollar. So we'll see. I'm trying to think of what's coming up that affects the dollar. Really nothing other than the fact that if this market really starts to cave in, probably the dollar gets strength out of that. Other than that, I'm not sure what helps it near term. Because right now, remember, weak unemployment number on Friday, there actually, if you think back, there was actually a bad PMI on like Tuesday last week. Nobody really paid attention to it. Both of those suggest Fed's not going to taper as fast, yet the dollar can't find strength, which says what I've been saying, which is that's a red herring. Once the Fed starts doing what the Fed's going to do, it's not like they're going to start changing on every employment number. I mean, are they going to become a trader themselves on a day-by-day basis? I would hope not, because that's nothing but volatility. The Fed doesn't do that. I mean, they've got to take a longer-term view, and you know, these guys are like gods. They see everything anyway, so why wouldn't they know what's going to happen? Or at least they try to tell us they do. So I don't want to sound too sarcastic, but it's so much nonsense to think that you can tell the future 6 months, a year, 3 and 4 years at a time. I mean, all this guidance junk they're giving us now is a bunch of nonsense. Hey, can you tell me that you're not going to raise interest rates until 2016? I mean, give me a break. Too much can change. Or at least they must have some tremendously powerful models. TLT. Bonds. Okay, so the bonds are still saying, well, bonds now are feeding off of fear as well as weak economic numbers. All right, so that high was 104.84. We got over it and stayed over it today. Okay, so when I'm looking, I'm trying to figure out, can it go higher? Looks to me like this is still the key bar. And what I'm talking about is this bar here. This big bar from, what is the date on that guy? November 20th. That's the bar. It's going into the high, went into the high today, top of resistance, got over a swing point high. Volume not expanding really, so tomorrow will be kind of key. Does it come back or not? It looks to me like it's going to fail here and come back in some. But, you know, you got to get, you know, you get a couple bars above it, you're going to try to stretch some more, but you've already had, right, you've already had your ABCD structure. That's finished. You got the fear trade today, which pushed it a little bit more. You're into the top of this. That looks to me like it's going to have a hard time going a little bit farther, right? It's probably going to come back in some at least, and potentially set up another ABCD. But certainly, you know, this has been weak. It's got a nice bounce. Probably going to come back in. Let's see what silver and gold did, and can they continue, which may give us a hint on the dollar. And I should look at the FXE as well. So silver gets over the high, doesn't have the volume. Swing point high is 1969. And it's right at it. I'm going to attack it tomorrow. Let's see if gold got over it. It probably did today because I saw it was up and it was right at it. And yes, it did. So, and I guess it did Friday, right? I actually forgot. Yeah, it did. It got over on Friday. I see the arrow here that tells me that. So, gold has a lot farther to go to get up there. Gold still looks to me like it's going to try to climb all the way back up to here. right, to that swing point high and that big volume bar, and that's probably on the same day, the 20th, and it is. That looks to be the target up there. This has an ABCD structure that will take it right there. So yeah, that looks like where it's going. So gold, maybe you get a little pull back, but this thing's going to continue to try to extend, and I expect those gold stocks are going to do the same. Let's take a look at those right quick while I'm here. GDXJ, for example, the junior miners. Yeah, big breakout here. GDX itself, which is the big guys. Those both have ABCD structures up. This one's almost done. Yeah, that's a nice turn off the bottom. Okay, let's go look at the FXE real quick, and then let me quickly squeeze in these two questions. And it looks the same as the dollar. It doesn't go, not going anywhere. Okay, what we got? GXP. That's Great Plains. Let's look at see what Great Plains is doing, and LVT, which is level 3, I believe. So Great Plains is a utility. Is it a utility? Yeah, it's in the XLU. Is this Great Plains? Yeah, Great Plains Energy. Yeah, I mean, this is, you know, it's right at the top. It's coming back in to do a retest regen immediately off the breakout here. That breakout, it's coming back in with too much volume though. And it's trying to break out on multiple time frames. Actually did start to break out on multiple time frames. So that's a tough one. So this is, you know, this is again, if you think back about the TLT and how it was supposed to fail, and it got down there, tried to fail, couldn't fail, even though it had broken out on 2 time frames, which is a high probability case for it to do a push. Same thing here. This thing, you know, when you get a breakout on multiple time frames, you should see extension, right? Well, we didn't. That's a big no-no. So if you're thinking about buying it, or if you're in it, if you're thinking about buying it, I'd certainly wait. If you're in it, I'd be careful, because even though you'll probably be able to get out of it for nothing, I wouldn't count on it breaking out now and continuing on, because it's just not doing it, right? Didn't do it. So I don't like that chart anymore. You know, you gotta let it rest and figure out what it's going to do. Right now, it's not telling you. The only thing it is telling you, going back to the multiple time frames, is that it didn't do what it was supposed to. And when it doesn't, you just got to accept it and stay off of it. Okay, the big breakout bar here, level 3. This is technology. They're actually based here in Colorado, I believe, up around Centennial. Is it Centennial? No, it's up around Broomfield. What is this? 3077. That was this breakout bar, wasn't it? What is that date? 28th? It's back here. Okay, and then you broke over here, you extend. Yeah, you know, one of the things that we haven't talked about a lot, because it just hasn't mattered, on a lot of these charts, there just is no volume, right? I mean, there's just nothing over here. Now, you don't have to have good volume to get extensions, but you do like to see it, right? I mean, it gives you more confidence. Well, you know, a lot of these breakouts that have taken place are all suspect. This is a suspect breakout here. You didn't get a retest regen off these highs, right? And you have nothing on the way up here, right? There just hasn't been anything really. Last time you had some serious volume was over here, which is what shows up here on this big bar. I'd try to wait until it got back down here if you're wanting to buy it. So the top of that bar, that's the October 28th bar, top of it is 30.77. In this shorter term time frames, 29.77, somewhere around 30 is where I'd be looking at it. Folks, let's go back and recap real quick. We had a pretty serious push to the downside today. We haven't seen one of these, and I can't remember when. I mean, what's it been? At least 2 months. You know, I could pull up the S&P again and look at it. It's probably a couple months now. And I'm looking for one. There's one right here. That's on November the 7th. That's the last time. Well, you actually had one here too. So you had maybe 2 now. So maybe more than I think. A couple of them, right? Now, even though it's coming back in and do a retest regen, and even though it doesn't have to quite get there yet, the sector seemed to suggest it will tomorrow. It should get a bounce off of that. But what you should notice is that we came off start the year. Not volume expanding, but wide price spread. You do it again here. Again, wide price spread. Unless I see a bar tomorrow that's, you know, one of these white candles that just what I call takeaway bars, and it goes right back up and takes it all away. You know, this is not a good scene, right? I expect we come in here, we're going to get the extension at some point, get in here, and then we're going to get the bounce. That bounce is going to be the key bounce. If you can't get over these highs that have been set, right, there's 2 of them up here now. Those are going to be serious resistance on the way up. If it can't get back over them over the next week or 2, you know, assuming this bounce comes within a few days, that's going to be a tough thing. Looks to me like this market is probably going to struggle. I've been talking about the end of January to subscribers. I think I've mentioned it here. I expect there to be some trouble, and this may be the start of it. But it's a little bit early to say that yet. Let's see what the retest regens look like and what the bounce looks like. What you want to guard against is a situation where you just go sideways for a while, right? You build up some force and then you come barreling down. And we're not there yet, but it can shape up that way. I got to let it go at that. I'm over quite a bit here. We'll see how it trades tomorrow. I think you'll see either we'll get that retest regen tomorrow, maybe it'll bounce and then the retest regen, but it's coming. Have a great night, folks. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you tomorrow. Have a great one. Good night.